Hey guys, welcome back to the Hear Me Roar pod. I am Tobi and my co-host is none other than the Kate Save, which you might know her from Shark Tank. She's also founder of BeFit Foods and picked up Telstra's Business of the Year award too. Kate?
Well, Toby, you've got a super impressive CV, 25 years in global commercialisation experience, and you founded Creative Cubes, Australia's leading co-working space and real estate business.
All right, let's get on with the pod. Welcome back to the pod.
Hey, Toby, how was lunch? Oh, that's right, you're fasting still.
I'm still fasting.
Yeah.
And for listeners out there, I've been fasting only for 3 days, but we film all of our sessions on one day. So to some of them, it might feel like I've been fasting all month.
Yes. So true. Well, I had
Not a good idea?
lunch. Thanks for asking.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, there was some beautiful sushi that the team had organized in the boardroom.
Well, I missed
We had a
that.
small event on, which was great. So coming up on today's show, I met Tashi at a Flex Workspace Australia conference.
Oh,
I think it was an unconference conference. But actually had been following him on LinkedIn for a little while and kind of caught my eye because he does some pretty cool vlogs that actually were very indirectly but directly telling the story that I've been trying to tell, but he did it in such a better way. So, but that's not all about him. There's a lot more to him than his vlogs and working for JLL. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you.
Thank you. Well, let's get him on.
All right, guys. But first, guys, you've seen me put out content for years. It all started with James Shadrack from Purpose Productions. We've filmed over 800 vlogs, several hundred different pieces of content that has helped me take my business to the next level. We use Purpose Productions for all the content, pods, vlogs, and storytelling that we produce. Check out purposeproductions.co to learn how James and his amazing team can help you scale your business and get your message out there. All right, Kate, we're back with Tashi.
I'm looking forward to this story. The headline that I saw was $10 million failed.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, the first startup I co-founded with my former business partner. We hit a $10 million valuation bootstrapping, but we scaled and failed, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to share
It's not
more?
really failure, is it?
No, yeah, it really depends on how you define failure. But I can give you the really quick spiel of what that was, and if you want to unravel it, we can. It's almost like, I don't know what the number is, but maybe close to 12, 15 years ago, around about that, I started a business called Two Space, which turned restaurants that were closed during the day into co-working spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So leveraging the sharing economy angle to see how we could provide affordable workspace for people who work from home, blah, blah, blah. You know, it would be super useful now in today's world.
You're just way in front of the wave.
Yeah, well, if we could do it again now, if I had the energy to do it again, I would, but I don't. And we bootstrapped, frankly, not by choice, even though it was a good choice. It's because, you know, as first-time founders, we didn't know how to raise money properly. Yeah. VC funding and all of those, even angel investors, they wanted you to scale, grow, ridiculous hockey stick growth. We weren't ready for that because we were still trying to perfect our product. But, you know, we had lots of micro failures throughout that journey, pivoted a bunch, hit a $10 million val, which I always think is more of an art than a science. You know, it's just whoever's willing to pay for it. But a few people out there were willing to pay for that. But then around the time we exited to another business was when COVID hit. And unfortunately, because our model was very linked to hospitality venues,
Get it?
It got totally screwed by that. But yeah, learned a lot from it, and not in the style, oh yeah, you know, I learned this and that, but actually did, because I've taken a lot of those principles into what I do today, which is not a startup. It's kind of like a startup within a big corporate
Well, I think
company.
like I got such a biased lens on this because of my current operations, but like Flex is the new frontier for commercial real estate. And the fact that I don't think you failed or tried and failed. I actually think you honed your skills to be able to be of incredible value for JLL in your current role. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And it's such a interesting journey because a lot of entrepreneurs start and then think they'll end up as entrepreneurs, but to actually go from entrepreneurship to corporate as opposed to from corporate to entrepreneurship is the reverse. So
Yeah.
That's quite entrepreneurial.
It's the road
you get
not
paid
traveled.
well
Because
from
I'm doing
day
it the
one.
wrong way around.
It's like a do not enter sign. Screw it. I'm just going in
Yeah,
instead.
and can I take a paycheck on the way in
Yeah.
instead of on the way out?
That was a big part of it. Frankly,
Yeah.
reality hit because the two-space journey didn't take a paycheck out of that business for the whole 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Or went back into the business to other, founding members and the team. And we really believed in that model, which is why I always believe if you're going to try start something, if you've got an exit strategy in mind day one, it's probably not going to work because you need that grit and that passion about it to keep going, even when you've got the odds stacked against you.
Do you have an exit strategy, Kate?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I think from day one we had it because that's where it started. We were solving a problem with the global obesity and diabetes.
For my
crisis.
first venture, it was all about the exit.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It was building to the exit. And then I got there and it was kind of like quite unfulfilling. Like I thought like, oh, if I get there, just
Yeah.
one more big account will sell.
Yeah, right.
It just never was fulfilling. And I got to be honest, Creative Cubes, I don't have an exit strategy for Creative Cubes.
Super
I'm just enjoying the
Well,
build.
one may present itself to you one day in a very
for sure.
serendipitous manner.
Oh, for sure.
But you're building it in a way where, because you're not chasing it, you'll probably get an incredible amount of value for it. And let me rephrase that. I mean, if you've got an exit plan, it's probably because you're way more organized and way better than a lot of first-time founders like myself. Because what I found to the funding point I was making when we first started, what I did find when we did get interest for some seed capital was that the amount of growth that they wanted to see so early would have put us in an early grave as a business because we would have just been like, okay, rather than trying to fine tune the technology, our experience, we need 10 more sites in the next 6 months. Otherwise, when we go for our second round of funding, we're going to be devalued. We're going to miss those targets and we're going to be so diluted. So,
But then you're working with the wrong purpose
yeah, exactly.
because you're like, I got to get the return on the investment from the guy that gave or girl that gave me the money.
Yeah.
And actually it takes you away from like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, completely agree. Because it was in the third, fourth year of that business where I think we really hit a gold mine in terms of what the model should be. Because at the beginning it was gym membership style model, very affordable because we're not paying rent because technically all these restaurant and hoteliers are already paying rent for their service. They just don't use it between certain moments. So we could, charge members who would use it like $40 a month to use all the stuff. And our partner at the time was Optus, did the internet for free and the spaces were already fit out. So a very low cost model. However, in order to make that, I guess, commercially viable, you needed a shit ton of members, right? Even though we had the advantage of scaling to like literally hundreds and hundreds of locations across APAC. But what we found is that to the point of it being a double-sided marketplace, the venues and the members were the most important thing, and that's something you can appreciate. So towards the end, the model was flipped that we actually started charging venues because they got foot traffic, they got eyeballs, they got marketing, they got people in there buying food. And maybe the mum and dad owned restaurants couldn't afford that model, but the hotels that had these empty lobbies or commercial real estate properties would pay like a service and a product fee per month to just have this giant marketplace and community of people in the area that would come and work from the space and build a vibe. And that's why I think it could work today as long as you got the technology correct to connect everyone, because the whole principle behind it was that no matter where you'd work, you could connect. And we had a few founders meet and start businesses that are now valued like, hundreds of millions of bucks today that I'm always very proud of.
And I'm super curious, should COVID not have come, what was the plan?
I don't know. I mean, the BS answer is world domination. We would have just totally just grown and done that. But again, to the first time inexperienced founder piece, COVID was probably a cop out, if I'm going to be honest, because we were totally burnt out by the 6th, 7th year. Like my co-founder, brilliant developer, he's over at Atlassian now. He was kind of like losing a bit of steam and looking at other businesses on the side. I kind of at the time was also, I met my now wife and we had responsibilities like, shit, man, I need to make some money and provide some security for this family. And right decision because, happy to share, we just had our son, who's 5 weeks old now, Logan.
Congrats.
So even these day trips are like, well, I should be at home with him.
Oh
right now.
man, I get it.
But yeah, we totally got burnt out towards the end because it was our first time. Now, if I were to start another business today, I would do it very differently. And it's interesting because I just turned 37 in January, but a Harvard Business article by The Review states that the most successful entrepreneurs are actually in the early to mid 40s.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the young founders when they look at all that stuff. Because you got your network, you got experience, you failed a bunch, but also at that age, you know what you want, and you're not just a dog chasing cars. So the success rate is extremely high.
Right.
So it's great news for anyone listening who thinks that it's too late, but it's actually a golden age to do it, especially now with AI and tech and everything supporting these solo founders.
So your first grey hair pops up and you go, now I'm
Now
wise
it's time.
to be in business.
Here I am. I've arrived. That's amazing. And so what's your reflection on that business to where you are today at JLL?
I think that business taught me how to juggle a ton of moving parts and work under pressure and also be extremely resourceful. So even though I work at JLL now and they're super supportive, we operate like a startup within that business, right?
And what's your role, just so?
So I lead the flex-based business across Australasia. So what that means is there's a lot of investor clients that, Tobi, you're very aware of because you'd be exploring the space as well, that want to design, build and operate their own flex space or partner with an operator like Creative Cubes because to Tobi's point earlier, flex is the future or a big part of the future of commercial real estate. So all these big buildings, even if they're like 30, 40 floors, 20,000 square meters, they need an element of flexibility in there because it's almost as important as your everyday amenities.
Well, we're seeing briefs in market, and you probably see more than I do, but we're seeing briefs in market where you've got a 15 to 40,000 square meter site. And large tenant will only come if there's flex.
Wow.
So true.
Yeah.
Every single redevelopment or development, whether flex goes in or not, that comes across our desk or the JLL table, because we do a lot of that kind of stuff. They all consider or need flex, and even the ones that don't consider it are almost defensively considering it because the major tenants that will underpin the rent and therefore the valuation of the asset, they're all asking for it.
Totally.
Whether they use it or not is another question, but as an owner, who really cares? If they sign the lease, because that's one of the reasons, the 7-10 year lease upstairs, it's a huge differentiator. And then it's even more important to get operators like Tobi in, because if the tenants don't use it, you don't want just an empty space there. That's relying on
there's multi dimensions here, and I don't want this to go into a podcast about flex because that's not our audience. But there's multi dimensions here, right? So to keep an asset relevant, you want to have an element of activation.
Right.
So you're not just rocking up to a dead, boring, uninspiring space.
Yeah.
Then to my call out earlier, which you validated, we're actually going into 2 assets at the moment, which we haven't announced, which might have been announced by the time this pod comes out, that were mandated from a larger tenant. And so said landlord procured flex operators and put it to tender. Right. And we were the recipient of these 2, except there's not only 2 in the market, there's hundreds.
Okay, what about the flipping this to the retail model? Because a girlfriend said to me, I'm going to start a business and it's a bricks and mortar. Can I talk to you about it? And I'm like, we literally just got out of our last bricks and mortar last year after having a plan for having them Australia-wide because for 1,000,001 reasons. But I think there's something important about bricks and mortar in retail. But on the flip side, who can afford to be paying 7 days, 24 hours a day rent and only opening 38 hours?
So when you say retail, help me understand what you mean, because
could places have flex for their retail operations, rather than having these fit outs that one organisation comes in, does a 200 grand fit out of their clothing shop? Could different retailers be, rotating or something like that? I think you'd be able to share more on it than I can. But like flex is like the spectrum is so large. I've got a great friend. I've got 2 great friends who started a company called Salon
I'm sure
Lane.
You've got more friends than that.
Yeah, only 2. These guys I grew up with, Jared Keane and Lance Kalish, both grew up in my street where I grew up as a kid.
Yeah.
And they've gone into the flex space, but they actually do flex for hairdressers.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
cool.
right.
So hairdressers, it's called Salon Lane. I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And so to your point, like they came to me and said,
That's
hey, we
cool.
want to understand flex. And I'm like, hey, this is how I do it. And they're like, yeah, but we don't want to apply it to the working office. We want to do it for the hairdresser or the beauty professional.
I love that. I sat at a bar recently and I'm not drinking for a year. Toby doesn't drink at all. So I find this so much easier in his company. And I don't know, 3 months in or something like that. But I still go to my little bar after work and they have a whole range of non-alcoholic, no sugar drinks for me. And I overheard these two barbers having a conversation about how much they pay to rent their seat at two different competitor barber shops. And then what they're pulling in. My God, I was like multiplying that by 52 going, I should be a barber. You get a set of scissors, $300 and rent a chair, no overheads, unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to like so there's so many things flashing through my head here. We could have teamed up. We could have done a Cubes anywhere. But that's not our mission.
Sure.
Our mission isn't just to open up spaces all over town.
Yeah.
But it is to add value. We exist to enable success. And if that's done at Stevie's restaurant because there's downtime, then maybe we can apply technology and do it that way. Let's have a conversation offline. But actually the flip to it is, and I've lost my train of thought here, the spectrum of flex today
and what that means,
is so
huge.
broad.
It's huge.
Well, I remember the conundrum during COVID when our retail store was technically allowed to be open because we're food. However, my team were terrified of facing the public because of the fear out there. So they wanted to work from home. And I'm like, how do you work from home when you're the retail assistant, or the retail store manager? It boggled me because there is no model for that. So if you go into retail, you've committed to a life of not having flexibility. So how do you bring that to the retail space? So
there's definitely, it really depends. Even when we look at the workplace dynamics within, a lot of different commercial businesses and industries out there, but, certain are glued to the space and certain people have that very flexible laptop lifestyle, which they take the piss of sometimes, frankly.
Down the beach.
But, to the retail point, we are seeing, and I'm helping do a couple of things in Asia right now, and we're calling it maker spaces. Or you've probably heard about it, where it could be the hairdresser model. It could be a cool one is the fashion model. So a lot of different fashion startups and companies work from the space, and during the day, there's a communal area with a lot of tables, but at night it flips into a catwalk so they can book it in the evening. And so there's a lot of stuff emerge. I actually think there's going to be a huge wave of these niche co-working flex spaces that turn up that are very focused on different industries because people are craving that community and everything, and that alignment in terms of what they're working on.
We'll have to ask our kids, won't we? Because apparently 70% of the jobs they get don't exist now. So what do they want to do? Because they hold the keys to the future.
So what's interesting about this? What's interesting about this world is, you've got Creative Cubes, you've got Workspace 365, you've got Hub Australia, you've got the Commons, you've got Jess at Whatso, who's a really good friend of mine. Like our version, we're all in flex, but all of our products are very different. Because my lens on it is very different to Jess's at Whatso, which is different to Cliff's at the Commons. And so there's this massive broad spectrum of how do we get that right for the future of work.
It's cool, man, because even walking in here, and I've been to some of your spaces before, you can feel that difference.
There is a difference.
And even the content you're putting out there, sitting in this room, is cool, man. Like you're doing cool stuff. And I feel like even from and I'll stop the commercial landlord chat and go back to some of the startup stuff. But even when I talk to all of those investors and all the funds and everything, they're like, we just need cool brands and cool experiences in the building. Like what I think is going to happen even from a flex angle is already today, and it's happened over the last decade or so, when they're looking for like cafe or food operators, even in Melbourne or whatnot, they're like, oh, we don't necessarily want the big chain down here. We want the really cool like cafe, sole ownership, dude covered in tattoos, piercings, serving coffee, really cares about it.
Maybe in a acai bowl,
Exactly. I feel like also there's going to be
Please stop talking about food. I haven't eaten in 3 days.
The fasting. you know, we'd prefer, okay, we could go down the route of having something hyper professional, blue collar, whatever, white collar, or we could get in like, you know, creative cubes and Tobi and his team because we just want that vibe.
Yep.
Like I do feel like that's going to be a thing. And I guess going back to the startup stuff, you know, doing all of that two-space stuff, and I did a few startups before, but that's the one that I'm proudest of. I do really feel like the resilience and the resourcefulness from that journey is what I've been able to leverage to grow the business at JLL. Because when I first started there 5 years ago, it was a team of 2, me and one other, and now we're a team of like 40 people, right?
Cool.
And there were these ups and flows, and the advantage of a startup in a corporate is you get paid, so you don't have that.
You're not going to lose your house.
Yeah.
Coming home.
And that being said, you're still an experiment, so you could
Yes.
get cut at any moment if you're not
True.
delivering.
Yeah.
But we are.
And
that's
the
good.
politics, that was like the first thing
Yeah.
you said. Don't experience that, but tell me what that's
Oh
about.
man, I mean, there's only so much I can say, or I'll get fired, right?
Absolutely.
But like
Yeah.
politics. I mean, any big business, there's an element of office politics, right? And for me, it doesn't necessarily mean when you hear politics, oh, it's all like backstabbing and Game of Thrones, but in the office kind of thing. It generally is speaking, when you look at how a big corporate exists, there's lots of different business units under that umbrella.
Right.
And if you take all the fluffy and the nice things away and you look at black and white, everyone's trying to cover their nut, make enough money, right? So when you're venturing out into that business and you're trying to, I guess, develop your own product offerings or work with clients that cross over with multiple, you just need to make sure that you don't step on other people's toes or frame everything in a way where if you win, they win. I think that was the biggest thing that we did. So rather than kind of feel like the little brother or sister in the company that was just getting started out, whenever we won, we'd make sure that if there were different business units within JLL that could work with us and also get a cut in the fee, but then it helps the client because there's economies of scale, helped us, right? So yeah, when I say politics, it's kind of like a combination of appreciating to do your job, you're probably going to have to help others do theirs, but then also
Not stepping on toes is really
Well, I
interesting.
think I can't speak on commercial lens, but I know on the residential side of things, some of these agents are really territorial about their commission.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And so I haven't seen that in the commercial side and on with creative cubes and whatnot. But like, I can only imagine, you know, Flex coming in as a real threat to some of these potential agents who have been selling, you know, or leasing like plates at a time, you know, floors at a time or half floors. And so now you're going to micro that up and I'm going to do the same work, but I'm going to get a quarter of the check. I can imagine how that politics, quote unquote, plays out, right?
Well, if that's what happened, like full transparency, the first year or two I was there, like, oh, this guy's going to take 20% of my asset or 10% where I'm going to lose that commission. But now it's flipped completely where it's like, shit, I can't fill the rest of this asset unless I put this in there. So it's almost like, and then even from an agent appointment perspective, because as you know, filling is half the battle, being appointed to those assets is the first half. So when you've got a big new building and you see like, you know, JLL or CBRE or Colliers or Cushies or whatever on it, they all have to pitch to be the agent to fill it because it's their stock. You know, helping them get appointed to that by putting forward a really thoughtful and measured flex strategy, whether I go in there or someone else, goes a long way and helps them win that. So it's almost like the start, it was iffy, but now we're part of the conversation. So if we can help that move along, that's great. And I guess the second part of the politics angle is less about the people, more about the process.
Yeah.
So the first couple of years I was banging my head going, dude, I could have done this like last night, like on my own or whatever, but it takes like 2-3 weeks, sometimes months. But then you learn to embrace the governance and the process because being part of like a Fortune 200 company, there's weight that comes with that and a bit of trust in the brand versus if I were to do it my own or back in my startup days, like I promised the world or Richard Branson and be like, yeah, we can do that and then figure it out later. But it doesn't carry the same level of, I guess, trust or moral obligation as if I sign something, it's because like 20 people above me over in the States or in Asia or whatever have signed off at it and agreed to those commercial terms. So yeah, it's been good and bad, but I think overall, I think I love the point that you said earlier about the startup, like you can kind of grow as an individual. I like to call it character capital. So instead of like startup capital or venture capital, it's character capital. Because when you start something and you fail, it's really easy to be like, oh, I messed up. What a waste of time. Because you're just looking at money in, money out, time spent. But you always forget to as silly as it sounds, look at yourself as a graph.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the startup capital, startup graph, boop, it's like, it went up and then down, but overall I'm kind of trending upwards, and it means the next venture, whether it's a startup or office job, I'm way better for it.
Well, I think you're in the golden era right now for Flex.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want you to jump anytime soon and quickly, because I think that like you've made a couple of points before how the first couple of years it was hard to get the attention of the agents to sort of like, or the agents felt a threat that they were going to take some of their pie. I definitely saw that as an operator. So I can only imagine what it was like on the inside. But now, like, it's an ingredient. It's a must
for sure
to keep yourself relevant. I remember back in the day, when I say back in the day, 98, 99, 2000, friends of mine moved out of home and they moved into Harry Triggerboff's Meriton Apartments in Bondi Junction above the train station there. And I was like, dude, why? Well, at this place, at Meriton, I've got a tennis court, I've got a gym, I've got a sauna, I've got an indoor swimming pool, I've got an outdoor swimming pool, I've got a barbecue area. And my parents' place, I've just got a backyard and a swimming pool. And so I get all of this feature and amenity for like a little bit out of pocket, but and so I liken that.
And security in this day and age as well.
Totally,
huge,
but I liken the amenity in the resi side to what we're doing in the commercial side. They need the vlogging studio, not because it's gonna, but their client needs it. Not because their landlord needs it. They need the cafe buzzing. They need an event space to host people so that people are walking past the building and going, "Wow, like what is that place?" They need the small office sizes because those people will grow, and we've proven this time and time again. They'll grow, and then they want to stay in the same building, so they'll go up to the next floor and take a direct lease with the landlord.
The incubation of, like, it just opens up a whole new world for these landlords. They could only normally target big companies that would sign 7 to 10 year leases. Now they can look at smaller, medium to size companies under more flexible arrangements.
So we have 15,000 companies that reside at Creative Cubes.
Wow.
If I lose a customer,
14,999 left.
If landlord loses a tenant, loses one tenant, their catastrophic position is a lot bigger than mine. Sorry.
Oh no, I was also going to say, like, this studio is so dope, like, and it's almost like a staple now. Like every floor plan that we look at, even if it's a landlord bespoke owned one, it used to be just a podcast studio, which could have been like a small 4-person meeting room. Now it's like, oh, how do we do something cool like this? Because obviously, filming 101, and you guys have nailed it here. Like, you want somewhere with no natural light so you can control the lighting. That's actually a dream come true if you've got a really shitty floor plan. Of course. You suddenly have...
This was the shitty part of the floor plan. Most popular part now.
It's kind of like a conversation. It's like, rather than, oh, what are we going to put there? It's like, dude, that's like the best place to put a content creation studio, which every industry out there is trending towards. You even look at the BlackRocks and the top companies at the world. They're all experimenting with content.
Well, I was at the
creation.
Sydney Swans last Friday. I went to Sydney and I went into their new facility. Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
You got to go down there. It's
not that lucky.
Fox Studios. And they took me on a tour.
Yeah, cool.
And what they showed me was they actually had something very similar to this. Inside a dingy hole that they turned into their media. So when you see the key players on the Jumbotron going, "Come on, guys, get loud." At least they do that in basketball. It's all filmed in their corporate studio. It then gets broadcast out to the game or onto national television. It's turning those tough moments or those tough spaces into thriving spaces. But then, like, to the point, like a landlord, like I know Atlassian, for example, they're downsizing. How do I know that? Apart from it being broadcast in the media, I've been offered some of their spaces. Through agents. However, the landlord's losing a tenant that occupies 7 floors in Martin Place or however many floors. That's a big loss for the landlord. Right? If I lose 7 customers, it hurts because I have a personal relationship with almost everyone that comes through the door, but it's 7 out of 15,000. And so my revenue is not really rocked. And by the way, it'll go down, but 14 people will come through the door. So we're always in a net positive for the month. But the point of the conversation is that the risk is now spread, and the total addressable market around the smaller guys is far, far greater. Lululemon, great example. They reside in our Collingwood site.
Aesop as well.
Aesop is there as well, and Swiss.
Yeah.
But the Lululemons of the world no longer taking the 2,000 square meters that they were previously. They're now into a certain size. I won't disclose all their numbers, but they're in a certain size, and their staff are a lot happier because the site, even though it's smaller, they feel like more connected. Rather than 10 people being in a 2,000 square meter office space, 10 people, they can walk outside their suite and there's 150 other people there.
Yeah, it's just the way that even it's really simple. Like, and this is how I even explained it to my wife's son Madden, who just turned 15. It's like, what's going on with all this other stuff? It's like, for the first time, if you own a building as a commercial landlord, you actually have to care about what the experience is for the person who walks through the door. Yeah. Like 10 years ago, it was like, all right, everyone signed their lease because they need office space because we're stuck in this industrial revolution style of working where everyone needs a workstation. I'll check back in with you in 10 years' time when your lease is up. Oof. Now it's kind of like, when you think about it, people need to have a reason to come to work in the office. And if they don't have that reason, then the companies like the Lululemons of the world and whatnot, they don't need space or to lease office space. So in order for the landlords to even fill their building, they have to care about what the companies want in order to get them to lease the space. Yeah. And the companies care about what their employees want. So it's this huge shift for the first time where it's like, okay, that's why words like hospitality and everything are being thrown around even by landlords. That's why all your, chief financial officers are all property experts now suddenly, or know about property when they didn't like 10 years ago because it's all a cost. So
there is funding in the wellness space for corporates as well. So that ability to have gyms or to have meditation rooms or, like you see, some of these incredible office fit outs. The other thing that crossed my mind was, obviously during COVID, there was a big move away from the city. So we live in Mount Martha. We can see the city from where we are, and it looks beautiful, but we just knew it was empty, that there was nobody there. This spectacular city of Melbourne, completely desert. And the only way to bring people back in is to allow that flexibility.
Yeah. You've got to earn, as an employer,
why would you drive from the beach to the city unless there's
you've got to earn the commute. Yeah. You've got to give your staff a reason to come to the place of work. Yeah. And some of that is in flex, as in, hey, you can work from Mount Martha a couple of days a week. Yeah. But in order for you to grow as a professional, you need to be around your team. In order to grow the bottom line in your company, top and bottom line in your company, you need to be eating your own dog food, so to speak. Yeah. And so it's actually quite a complex space and place to be, but it's starting to, it's the momentum, the flywheel is starting to happen. People are coming back.
Do you know my blueprint? Everyone has their serviette that they wrote on. My serviette had what I now look back at was a co-working space of what BeFit Food would be. So I drew on there this little border, and they're all little glass offices around the outside of people we liked, graphic designers and web people, we're talking a decade ago, and all these different groups that we even had a telecommunications person in there in case the internet went down and whatever, but all the people we liked around the outside, then this communal area with a cafe. And that's like my serviette moment of, this is what I want it to feel like at work. And that's cool. Here we are, and that's what you guys do.
Well, that's the key words, feel, right? You weren't like, how many workstations do I need? It's like, how do I...
didn't care. It's just happy people in a happy place, cool people.
And I guess
whatever that means.
My kids don't think I'm cool, but Tashi says
you're cool, man. Your brand's definitely cool.
I'm going to replay this for them over and over. Thank you.
Well, you're definitely cool. I think you're cool. Like, just one more boring point about traditional office space when it comes to flex. One big thing that is pro agents when they get to have someone like you in the building or put flex is that when they speak to the tenants wanting to sign leases upstairs, they suddenly be like, hey, we've got the event space, we've got all these meeting rooms, we've got all this cool shit, the studio downstairs, we've even got a cafe or a commercial kitchen. You don't have to put it in your floor plate. Means they can have their napkin moment. Because then suddenly, if they get, call it 100 square meters back, or so, whether that's 10% or 30% of their floor plate, they can suddenly mess around with it, have their own little cool thing, whatever their employees want in there, versus some of the different things that could fit within the flex business that is then serviced as well by on-site staff and people who remember your name and make you feel good versus just sit there.
And you're not paying for everything individually. Like there's a cost, but it's not as if every single bit of that is your
Well, it's
cost
communal,
that you're
right?
bearing. Yeah.
So your percentage is contributing to
Yeah.
a
And
big
I've done the
piece.
math actually. I've because I'm a numbers guy before a sales guy. Where
Oh, you're an engineer. I read that.
Oh yeah,
biomedical engineer.
Yeah, not many people know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
A million people know now.
Yeah, well, no, it's Asian parents, they wanted me to do medicine.
I
I was like,
understand.
oh, close
Yeah.
enough, biomedical
Yeah.
engineering. But I did the math where it's kind of like if you calculate what you rentalize the space that you would have allocated to all of the different things that you have within potentially a third space or flex space, whether it be event, meeting rooms, collaboration zones, all that kind of stuff. But you end up using it, even if you pay market rate within the co-working or third space within the building, you actually come out way on top, a huge saving versus than just paying rent for space that you might use 20% of the time. So it's almost like, I feel like as the market evolves and people become more educated, before it was just kind of like soft drivers. Oh, this is nice. Oh, that's nice. But now we're becoming like numerically equipped to measure what works and what doesn't, which actually helps a lot of these deals go through, even if it's just leases upstairs.
100%.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to wrap it there. I'm going to link all of Tashi's side hustle videos and content, LinkedIn. You can find him at JLL in Sydney.
Yeah.
If you ever want to go knock on his door. Fascinating. And I could speak to you all day. I have to cut it off because this could get slippery slope and we'll just end up talking for 3 hours. And I'm not sure anyone's going to tune.
I invite that day when that day comes.
Not any moment because I've got to go to Adelaide tomorrow, but anytime.
Sure.
It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for taking the time to come out here and hang with Kate and I.
Guys,
after the break, we'll be back with our final segment.
weareluna.co is a great place for you and your business to start off with phenomenal accounting and legal services. So if you're a startup or a scale-up looking for legal and finance support, or alternatively looking to raise capital, weareluna.co is where you need to be starting off.
Kate, how cool was that?
So cool, so eye-opening as well. And the two of you talking future, my head's just spinning. I'm like, yes, that's where we need to be and it's where we're going. So
I picture him driving down a one-way street in reverse. So he's gone from the startup to the big corporate, whereas most people jump out of the big corporate into the startup.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, there's, if you want to go the other way.
Well, my dad used to drop me before he passed away. He used to drop me at the front of the City to Surf, which was a race from City to Bondi. 14-kilometer race. Yeah. And I used to participate in that annually. And
that's really hilly too, isn't it?
There's a couple of hills in it. It's not that. Heartbreak Hills are pretty crazy, but it's such an awesome run. I want to do it with my kids, hopefully this year, if not next year. And my dad literally parked me at the front of the line because he was able to go down a one-way street in reverse.
Oh my goodness!
This is back in the early 90s, so not so much camera and trouble. We couldn't get caught on camera, but Tashi reminds me of someone that's driving down that street, not doing the wrong thing because he is going one way. He just happens to be going the other way. But his vlogs and pods, they're super cool. And I think people enjoy it. If you're in commercial real estate listening to this, or if you're just an entrepreneur that's sort of like maybe struggling, take some leaves out of his book. I think it's very powerful.
And I love how he's taken everything that he's learned, whether it's the $10 million failure or it's just the learnings, and he's loved and appreciated and scaled, but in someone else's business, kept his house, kept his family, maybe a bit more work-life balance. It's very cool.
I don't see 10 million failure. I see $10 million education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I see it. But he's amazing. I'll link everything in the show notes below, guys. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.